Okay, so last class we've discussed a few techniques of writing conventions and styles that we are used that are majorly used in the professional writing. We are going to continue with the same thing. So four of it we have already discussed for the last class. We are going to continue with the rest that we have today. We'll wind up a little sooner today because there's something else that's waiting in. But we'll finish off this, okay? There should be at least four more things, four more pointers that I need to talk to you about style in writing. Four of them we discussed, including redundancy, repetitiveness, and a few others, right? Substitution with specific words, concrete words, etc. We're going to continue the rest of the writing conventions for the same. Now, look at the fifth question that you have. We'll try and understand, like in the previous class. Um, we looked at the question, we did the exercise, and then through that, we had understood what these conventions are. So we'll continue the same practice for this one as well. Look at the sentence you have here. Fifth one, read the question first because the question has a clue for you on what exactly we'll be working on, right? So redundancy basically means repetitiveness. The previous exercise, I think fourth one or so, we did a little bit on this repetitiveness. But this one is a little more, right? There, if you remember, we were talking about things like living mortal. I told you because the word mortal by itself means living, you don't have to write living mortal. You'll just write mortal, right? Now, the sentences you will have in five, they're not as simple and short as you have seen in the fourth exercise. This is a little lengthier, right? All of those sentences are a bit lengthier. We'll see where and how should we reduce repetitiveness or redundant. Redundancy basically means repetitiveness. And what kind of repetitiveness? Irrelevant repetitives, right? Where you repeat something when not required. Okay, that is redundancy. Let's look at the first exercise here. The first, sorry, not exercise, the first question in fifth exercise. Although this option may be safer and less risky, there is an initial 1 month period of time of great uncertainty at the start of negotiation. Now, your task is that you pay attention to the sentence here and try and rewrite this one so that we remove all the unnecessary repeat words or repeat phrases, or if there's a repeat clause, you can remove that clause also altogether, right? The task is that you remove anything that you think is irrelevant or is simply repeating without adding anything to the sentence. Look at it and tell me how can you change the sentence.
Ma'am, we can remove less risky.
Sorry?
Ma'am, we can remove less risky.
Less risky. Although this option may be safer and less risky, correct. You can remove less risky. You can, because either you say less risky or safer, both has to be. I mean, keeping both of them is not giving you any additional points, right? It's not adding anything. So either you keep less risky or safer. But it is always better that you choose a word that is a single word reference, right? Less risky is 2 words. So if you have a better one word to use for that, you should always prefer doing it because remember, in all kinds of professional writing, the idea is that you keep your writing concise. If one word does, then use one word. Don't use 2 words where only one word is required. Right, good. So we remove less risky. Anything else here? Although this option may be safer, the rest of it, they also have phrases or words that may be repetitive, something that we not need.
Ma'am, rest giving 2 times that initial and start, so we can remove one of those.
So initial 1 month period of time of great uncertainty at the start of negotiation. Okay. So what will you remove? You remove initial or do you remove start? What do you want to remove?
I think start.
Then how will you write the sentence if you're removing start then?
Ma'am, initial.
Yeah. Don't you think it's better to remove initial?
Yes, ma'am.
Right? So you can use, I mean, because if you're going to remove start, then the start hasn't occurred as one word. It's in a phrase, right? Start of negotiation, the start of negotiation. So it's always better that you go, if you want to make changes, then initial is the only single word and you can take it out. But we don't have the option of removing the whole of the start of negotiation. That will change the meaning of the sentence. So we'll maybe remove initial, right? So there is an initial you can remove. We don't need it. Okay. Then anything else that requires removal? How about 1 month period of time? Do you have to say 1 month period of time?
No,
No,
ma'am. We can
right?
say only 1
Huh.
month period.
You can simply say 1 month, right? So period of time is an unnecessary addition there. It is not giving you anything valuable. So there are three things that we have removed here then. We have removed less risky, an initial, and period of time. So if you rewrite this sentence, it is going to be read as, although this option may be safer, there is, yeah, go ahead.
Initial 1 month.
There is, do you need a 1 month? You don't know. There is 1 month period, or sorry, 1 month of great uncertainty, right? There's 1 month of great uncertainty at the start of negotiations. Although this option may be safer, there is 1 month of great uncertainty at the start of negotiations. All right. So you can bring down not just the number of words in this sentences, make it concise, but you also make it more crisp, right? Instead of adding all those irrelevant details. Okay. So this is what you're required to do. Whenever you write a sentence on your own or whenever you're editing somebody's work for precision and conciseness, make sure that these kind of redundancies or irrelevant repetitions are struck off. Okay. Let's go to B. We'll work on sentence B. Disclosures made in the footnotes of the financial statement indicate that the company has suffered heavy losses due to its involvement in legal proceedings. Yes? No? Look at the first part of the sentence. Disclosures made in the footnotes of the financial statement. You don't have to say disclosures made in the footnotes, right? Instead, you can simply say footnotes of the financial statement indicate, right? No need of unnecessary writing disclosures made in the. It doesn't add. You can write it. It may not be grammatically wrong. Some people may even accept it. But in professional writing, because conciseness is your friend, you'll have to cut out everything that doesn't add anything to your sentence. Disclosures made in is one such phrase, which is not giving you anything relevant. It does not give you any relevant details about it. So you simply write footnotes of the financial statement indicate that. Now, anything in the rest of the sentence that requires chopping because it's irrelevant?
Ma'am, I think no.
Nothing, right? Do you see anything?
No,
Did you say
ma'am.
anything?
No, ma'am.
No, right? Most of what you see after that are things that are relevant to the sentence, right? You cannot probably remove anything from that clause part that the company has suffered heavy losses due to its involvement in legal proceedings, right? So we can let that be. There is nothing that is irrelevant in that part. Okay. Sentence C. Many companies simply cannot gain adequate access to the information they need to direct their market efforts efficiently, as our study shows. So when you're looking for these things, no, watch for these modifiers. Although modifiers like adjectives and adverbs, and when I say adjectives and adverbs, I'm also referring to phrases and clauses, right? From here onwards, now that you're introduced to all those things, you should know when we talk about any of these things, especially modifiers, we are referring to everything, the single worded adverbs and adjectives, the phrasal ones and the clausal ones, all of them. So when you're editing a work for conciseness or for redundancy, check for modifiers. Sometimes people overuse modifiers. We don't need it. Or when I say we don't need it, I'm saying that you use it, but then on second thoughts or third thoughts, you feel like, this is actually not adding anything valuable to the sentence that I have written. Right? You remove it and nothing will happen to the sentence. So that's how you look for redundancy or repetitiveness, right?
Ma'am, we can remove simply.
Simply we can remove, yes. There's no need of adding it. And usually in writing, because we are discussing also professional writing, you have already heard about these in the lectures, which is this topic on adverbs of comments and viewpoints, right? Although viewpoint adverbs are very common in writing, this comment adverbs are not used as much. It's considered a little informal for the writing practices. Simply is what it's a comment adverb. It's not a viewpoint adverb. If you use words like mathematically or biologically, philosophically, evidently, etc., then these are comment adverbs. And the speciality of comment adverbs are, sorry, not comment, viewpoint adverbs. The speciality of viewpoint adverbs are they always appear in the beginning of the sentence. So those kind of adverbs are seen more commonly in writing. The comment ones you should avoid. Simply is a comment adverb. So the moment you see it, you can edit it out from your sentence. So we remove simply. Then the rest of the part, anything that is redundant, something that you see is um, irrelevant.
Ma'am, can we remove as the study shows?
As our study shows. Can we remove it? Need to direct their market efforts efficiently. Yeah, as our study shows, you can remove. That can be removed, yes. The whole phrase doesn't add much to the meaning of the sentence, right? But more than as our study shows, is there anything in the main sentence? As our study shows is an additional phrase. In grammatical terms, something that you can call an adjunct. So optional. But in the main clause that you see here, is there anything that you think is redundant? Cannot gain adequate access to the information they need to direct their market efforts efficiently. Cannot gain adequate access to the information. Is they need absolutely important there? Can I simply say cannot gain adequate access to the information to direct their market efforts efficiently? Will that be okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we don't need they
Yes,
need,
ma'am.
right? That's an unnecessary phrase that sits there. We don't need it. Okay. So then we'll rewrite the sentences. Many companies cannot gain adequate access to the information to direct their market efforts efficiently. This is enough. This is the most concise way you can cut down the sentence, right? So at least 5 to 7 words or 8 words have been cut out from it, right? Now, cutting out doesn't mean that you cut out important information. You read the sentence and figure out if you are placing things that are relevant. If they're not relevant, of course, throw them away. We don't need it, right? Okay. D, a list of all supplies that are needed by each center in order to carry out the studies was prepared.
Ma'am, we can remove in order.
In order to, okay. So then it would be a list of all supplies that are needed by each center. Carry out the studies. Yeah, okay. In order to, you can remove. Sorry, in order you can remove. Correct. Anything else? Look at all that thing in between needed and a list, right? A list of all supplies that are needed, right?
Ma'am, we can also remove that are.
Correct, right? You can remove that are also. So a list of all supplies needed by each center to carry out the studies was prepared. That much is enough. It gives you enough details and it doesn't change the meaning of the sentence. If it doesn't change the meaning of the sentence, it means that the rest of the part you removed were useless. They were irrelevant, right? So we removed that are and we also removed in order. Now, E, last one here. The definitions of objectives and goals must be systematically made in order to ensure a successful training program.
Ma'am, we can remove one of the things of objectives or goals.
Correct. You can either keep objective or goal. One of those basically mean the same thing. You can just put in one of the two. And then you again remove in order, right? Similarly, like you did with the previous one. So definitions of objectives or the definitions of goals must be systematically made to ensure a successful training program. Okay. Okay. So this is on redundancy. You will keep seeing this one as the exercises progress. Most of it, even if it asks you to do or not, if you're working on conciseness, then basically this is the part of editing or this is the part of, editing. This comes under editing. So the part of editing that you are going to do to avoid repetitiveness is basically this, or more importantly, to ensure conciseness is to cut out irrelevant parts from the sentences you've written. Okay, now the next one is also very, very important. Read the question. Change the following sentences. This is number 6. Change the following sentences to avoid discriminatory language. We very briefly discussed about it in the very beginning of this session while we were discussing about formal and informal language. So I showed you a list of things or a list of instances that can make your language informal, right? So remember we spoke of colloquialism, slang, jargons, right? So for those of you who have been a part of that, you should remember that informal language, there are many instances of making a language informal, and some of them include using slangs that you should know, right? You must have already experienced it in one way or other. Colloquialisms, using local varieties and functions in the language, right? In addition to that, we also looked at the use of phrasal verbs in written language. That's also considered informal, or what you also call as not discriminatory, informal ways. Now, using discriminatory language is also part of the informal aspects of a language. But it is not just a part of the formality or informality in language. This is something that people should actively avoid doing in the language. We had a brief discussion on this that day, and I told you that discriminatory language would include biases with respect to various social categories. We discussed a few examples based on gender. Remember, chairman, right? Mankind. We looked at a few examples that day. So this discriminatory language, it needn't be always about gender, although the most popularly seen biases of languages are related to gender. This can be related to other social categories like race or ethnicity or caste or religion, right? Or color, right? Complexion. We know about racism and so on and so forth, right? So the discriminatory language would relate to any sorts of discrimination that is imparted to the language that we use based on discriminations of social categories, right? And this is strictly prohibited in any form of scientific writing, okay? Not just the general forms of your writing, like more informal forms of writing, like social media posts and all of those. In those categories, some amount of liberty is allowed because, again, it's a social media post. But when you're writing something professionally, scientifically, or technically, any of such usage in your language or any usage which reflects this kind of discrimination in your writing will not be permitted. There are high chances that you will be, your submissions be rejected by the journals. So, in fact, the writing manuals, which basically instruct people on what are the conventions that they must follow to write a certain kind of text, especially in the research and technical writing, very clearly mentions about the use of discriminatory language, and they're very strict about it. Okay. So let's look at some of these sentences to understand how this functions in language, right? We looked at one or two examples based on the gender biases. We'll see what else can creep in such kind of writings. The first sentence here, any worker who flouts the company rules will lose his increment. What's the problem here?
Ma'am, is it the word flouts?
Why would that be a problem? What does flouts mean? Flouts just means breaks, right? It's a verb. I don't think it has any problem. It's not a discriminatory usage. One might say it's not a very formal usage, although I have seen documents that draft or which is worded using, some of these expressions. It's not a problem. Flouts is a commonly used word. Not wrong.
Ma'am,
What's the
we can
problem?
use the employer instead of worker.
Worker who flouts. Yeah, you can change worker. Yes, that's right. You can change worker to any employee, right? You can change worker to employee. So any employee, not employee, employee, who flouts the company rules will lose his increment. Why only his increment? The force is going to definitely have people from all genders, right? So in cases like this, the idea is that when you write a general rule, the rule should be applicable to all. So if it's applicable to all, then you don't use his. What is the plural that you can use for his here? Some people, the initial convention was to write his or her, but his or her is a very, it doesn't, not just it's, it's not about it doesn't sound good, but it is a very cluttered usage of language. You're unnecessarily putting in things that is not required when you could very well replace it with a plural pronoun, right? So his can be replaced with what?
Ma'am, there.
There. Yeah, correct. There. So any employee who flouts the company rules will lose their increment. Okay. So not his, her, or anything, lose their increment. So you're trying to express by changing the pronoun to their, to the workers or to the employees that This is a generalized rule, right? Doesn't apply to one or two people, generalized thing, irrespective of your gender or your rankings. Okay. Now, B. The executive committee constitutes of an engineer, a businessman, and a lady doctor.
We can say only doctor
Yes, you can simply say doctor. How about businessman?
and businessman. We can say
How would you change businessman to a more neutral term?
and we can say entrepreneur.
Yeah, you can say entrepreneur, but is entrepreneur and businessman the same thing?
No.
You can use entrepreneur, not wrong, but they're not the same thing. I'm just checking if there are neutral terms for it, and there is, right? Usually, when there is man and woman in a usage, the usual practice is to change that to person. Like, chairman is changed to chairperson, right? So you can, instead of writing businessman, you can write business person. Okay. Or alternatively, you can also write business owner, right? Not entrepreneur. Entrepreneur it has a different meaning. Okay, although it sounds the same, you might have a tendency to replace it with entrepreneur, but it's a different thing. It has other meanings attached to it. So here you can either use a business person or you can change it to business owner. Both are correct. And a lady doctor, no, you simply write a doctor. No need of mentioning lady or man. Okay. So the executive committee constitutes of an engineer, a business person or a business owner, and a doctor. Okay. Right. How about C? An efficient salesman has good time management skills. I think most of these are concentrated on the gender biases.
And salesperson.
Salesperson, right? An efficient salesperson has good time management skills. Correct. Handicap seats in the local buses are strictly for the use of the crippled. Yes. Now, this language is basically in connection with the physically challenged, right? What would be the neutral words that you can use?
And instead of handicapped, we can use specially able.
Sorry?
Instead of handicapped, we can use differently able or specially able.
So how are you going to write it? You simply change it. No, you can also move around the words. So you say the seats reserved for the physically challenged, right? Instead of saying handicapped seats, you can say seats reserved for the physically challenged or differently able. There are many terms that people use. It depends on what you want to use. You can either use physically challenged or you use differently able. But you're going to change handicap to one of these. Seats reserved for physically challenged or friendly abled in the local buses are strictly for the use of the crippled. Now, this also has to be changed. How will you change this? There are many words that you can use. You can say paralyzed, okay, or incapacitated, or the most commonly used one would be disabled, right? You can use that as well. That's also an allowed term to be used. So you say seats reserved for the physically challenged in the local buses are strictly for the use of the disabled. Okay, got it? So people who are familiar with the disability literature will understand this better. Okay. Now, you might be confused as to whether you can use even disabled, but keep in mind, these are all, accepted ones. Like, for example, you have a phrase called the black literature, right? Now, black literature is fine because this is a term that the community as a whole has accepted to be used for themselves. Similar is the case with disabled, right? Although you might feel uncomfortable using it, you don't have to, because this is a term that the community has agreed and has been using for itself. So disabled or paralyzed, right? Or weakened. I think you should stick with the word disabled rather than going for the synonyms, because this is the more commonly used one. Okay. All right. Any question there? Understood? Okay. The last one. The annual conference on prevention of earthquakes was represented by 3 of our Chinese engineers. What's the problem here? Why is it problematic? What is the discriminatory language? Chinese, right? You don't have to say that. You don't have to, mentioning anybody's racial features or racial, affiliation will not help what you want to say. You can use those things only in places where you're asked to. Nobody will ask you whether they are Chinese or Indian or anything, right? They're engineers, irrespective of being Chinese or of any other race or nationality. So neutrality will also mean that you do not talk of these things unless asked for. Okay. So you don't have to use any Chinese or any other racial names there. You simply say engineers. 3 of our the annual conference on prevention of earthquakes was represented by 3 of our engineers. That's it. Okay. Nobody is asking you for anybody's racial profiling. So you can remove those. Got this? So this is our understanding. This should be how you are going to work around discriminatory language. Also an attempt to give you an example, a few examples on what discriminatory language would mean. We looked at 3 categories, gender, then the physically disabled category, and then also the last social category that we looked at is racial category. There are many more like ethnicity, okay, or caste, religion, color and complexion, a lot of them. 3 of them have been discussed here. You can find more examples online if you wish to pursue this further. Okay. Now, the 7th one, this is again based on writing convention. So we talked about repetitiveness, redundancies, concreteness, use of direct language, use of specific language, right? Now, next, what we're going to talk about is particularly with respect to sentence writing. All this while we are looking at parts of sentence, but now you're going to look at the sentence as a whole. Okay. So look at the question you have here. The following extracts contain short, choppy sentences which make the style of writing appear immature. Rewrite after combining the sentences appropriately. Now, before we begin doing this exercise, very important to tell you, and this is a little bit on style in writing and particularly about the sentence length and style of writing, right? Often when you write, the question that a lot of us have is how long can be my sentence? Or what are the kind of sentences that I can use to write professionally, right? Should my sentences be long? Should it be short? Or how should it look like? Now, in realistic cases, in the real life scenarios, when you write down something, your text, your written text is going to be a combination of both. And it can present the matter at hand more effectively when you're going to use a combination of both short and lengthy sentences, right? And by lengthy, we mean not 2 lengthy sentences. I think the next exercise we are going to have is also on 2 lengthy sentences. But at the outset, your sentences or your write-up should be a combination of both short and long sentences. What do we mean by short sentences, right? Short sentences are sentences which has just one subject and verb, right? Ideally speaking, one subject and one predicate. Okay. So anything like she is a girl or she's a good girl. It's an example of a short sentence, right? The problem with using only short sentences is that your writing is going to sound very monotonous. You won't be able to inculcate the flavors or your intentions of writing whatever you're writing about by using just short sentences. Okay. Or in other words, like the question in the question itself suggests you, it makes your writing choppy, right? Your short sentences are unable to give you a fuller understanding or a holistic understanding or a holistic presentation, make a full, wholesome presentation of what you want to convey to the reader. It sounds very monotonous in its tone, and particularly if you're writing something that is more intellectual in nature, more ironic in nature, then your sentence is incapacitated to convey the same to the reader, right? Your readability score will go really down if you're only going to write short sentence after one after the other, right? It will look like bullet points. It will not look like a wholesome paragraph or a wholesome text that is woven together. That is the risk of writing just small sentences. On the other hand, if you're going to write long sentences alone, if you're going to write only long sentences and you're not interspersing it with short sentences, the problem is that there are high chances that the reader will forget or the reader will lose touch with what you're writing, right? Because you're not giving a breathing space to the reader. It is same as we talk, right? If I talk and if I go on continuously in long sentences without breaking anywhere, without using short sentences, right? I go on adding phrases after phrases while I speak. It becomes difficult for you to catch on what I'm saying, right? Your in terms of writing, it is readability. In terms of listening, what happens? Your attention span is really reduced. You cannot go on listening to somebody who's not taking enough breaks, who's not using short sentences to communicate to you. Lengthy sentences run the risk of the reader or the listener to lose touch with the topic that is being presented or the idea that is being conveyed, right? By the time you reach the end of the sentence, you forget what's there. I mean, by the time you finish reading, you only remember those lengthy sentences. You don't know what exactly the sharp topic that is being addressed in the writing, right? So both then using just short sentences and using just long sentences are unproductive. What makes your writing a wholesome process would be to use a combination of both of them so that you get enough space and enough writing length to convey whatever your idea is to your reader. Okay, let's look at a few examples to understand what do we mean by choppy sentences, long sentences, so on and so forth. Okay, the first question we have here. Okay, the raw data was collected. A questionnaire was used for collecting this data. The group analyzed the data. It found that most people preferred air conditioners to air coolers. Now, do you see what I was talking about of the problem of using short sentences only? When you read this first question here, do you understand what can you relate with what I was saying in terms of using only short sentences?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Raw data was collected. Questionnaire was used for collecting this data. The group analyzed the data. It found that most people preferred air conditioners to air coolers. Right? There's no continuity. We don't see a flow in the writing because of the short, choppy sentences that form the grouping in the sentence. Now, how can you rewrite this? Or how can you combine these sentences together so that we remove this choppiness in the sentence?
The raw data was collected by questionnaire.
The raw data was
Combine that
collected.
two sentences.
You can combine these two sentences, correct. So what would you get then?
The raw data was collected by the questionnaire.
The raw data was collected. The raw data was collected using a questionnaire or through a questionnaire. Okay, anything. So then you have you have combined the first two sentences and you have added a little more to the short sentence so that you have more information than what you had for the shorter choppy sentence. How about the rest of the sentences that you have here? The group analyzed the data. And then the rest of the sentence. It found that most people preferred air conditioners to air coolers. Can we combine these two? We can, right? The group analyzed the data and found that most people preferred air conditioners to air coolers. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, good enough. So you have, instead of 4 short sentences, you have 2 sentences that are not short and choppy, but are enough in length to convey your idea, right? The first sentence is the raw data was collected through a questionnaire. The group analyzed the data and found that most people preferred air conditioners to air coolers. Okay. So that's how you can combine the 2 sentences. You can combine sentences and form lengthier sentences which are able to convey more information or convey the information in a better way than a short choppy sentence would be able to do. Okay. Okay, let's work on the second one. I think they have more number of sentences. Let's see how we can make it better. Ruby and Robert saw infinite possibilities in cyberspace. They were determined to turn their vision into reality. They wanted to build a simple internet service for ordinary people. Their friends scoffed at their ideas, but Roberts and Ruby doggedly pursued their dream. They analyzed other online services. They also assessed the needs of their customers. I think this is a good question for you to work on. I'll leave the sentence in your chat so that you can work on it. See if you can rearrange and give me an answer. Yeah, it's now there in your chat. Please access it and tell me how you will rearrange this. Yeah, 6 set of sentences. I think they can be reduced to easily 3. Any answers? No?
Ma'am, the
It's simple,
second
no?
and third
Ruby and
sentence we can combine.
you can combine every other second sentence to the previous one, actually, right? Ruby and Robert saw infinite possibilities in cyberspace and were determined to turn their vision into reality. Okay, first set. They wanted to build a simple internet service for ordinary people. Right now, this one you don't have to add or change anything because it's a good length sentence. You don't need to cut it off or chop it off or lengthen it further. It's a good length sentence. Next one, their friends scoffed at their ideas, but Roberts and Ruby doggedly pursued their dream. So you can change this to, although their friends scoffed at their ideas, Roberts and Ruby doggedly pursued their dreams. Right? So you've brought 2 of those things together. Then the last one, they analyzed other online services. They also assess the needs of their customers. So you don't have to write analyzed, assess separately in 2 different sentences because both will involve assessing or analyzing. It's the same thing. So you can combine it into they analyzed other online services and the needs of their customers. Or alternatively, they assessed other online services and the needs of their customers. Okay, so the first 2, then the third one is left alone, the 4th and the 5th together, then the 6th and 7th together. You might have to make little bit of adjustments here and there to make it into a full sentence, but this is how you do it. Got it? Okay. I think you've understood how to do that. Just check in with the sentences if you need to really write them separately, or if they're more or less talking about the same idea, or if the second sentence looks like the continuation of the first, but not too different by itself, then you can club it with the first one rather than writing it as a separate sentence. Okay, that's the idea you use here. Okay, now we don't have much time. I want to discuss this eighth one also with you. So see, you can work on your own. Let's look at this one. Break each of the following breathless sentences into 2 or 3 short sentences so as to make the sentence readable. Now, the reverse of what we did in seventh, right? There, the problem was you had 2 short sentences. Here, the problem is you have 2 long sentences. Another name you give it to is breathless sentence. The name breathless because not just physically breathless, it also means breathless in terms of comprehension. That is, the sentence is too long that by the time you finish listening or reading the sentence, you've lost the information that was presented in the beginning, right? So because of the confusions and ambiguity it can create, it's called breathless sentence, right? Let's look at the first example. There is no particular gadget which will produce excellent writing, but using a yardstick like the fog index gives us some guidelines to follow for making our writing easier to read, because its 2 factors remind us to use short sentences and simple words. You remember anything? Even if you have read it to yourself on your own, right? So that's the problem with breathless sentences. Now, can we chop it down? Can we cut them down into shorter 2 or 3 sentences? How will we do that? See, for all of these sentences, the idea is somewhere where you find a connector, right? The previous sentences, what we did is you simply used a conjunction or a connector to link 2 sentences, right? Whether that was a coordinating conjunction or subordinating conjunction. Here, the idea would be the problem here is there are too many connectors. So which means you need to concentrate on the junctions where you find a connector. Look at the first sentence you have here. I mean, not the sentence, the first part of the sentence. There is no particular gadget which will produce excellent writing, but using a high yardstick like the fog index. So what is your connector here?
But
Right? The word but is the connector. So from here onwards, where there, it means that there is a possibility that you can break your sentence there. Since you have seen a connector there, there's a high chance that the sentence can be broken there, because essentially it means that 2 parts have been joined there because you see a connector word, right? So there is no particular gadget which will produce excellent writing, but so you break at writing and then you begin your next sentence at, but using a yardstick like the fog index gives us some guidelines to follow for making our writing easier. Where will you break? What is your next connector? The first one was a coordinating conjunction, so it was easier for us. But the second connector is what? It's because. Because is coordinating or subordinating?
subordinating.
Is because coordinating or subordinating? It's subordinating, right? You cannot begin a sentence with because, or anything that begins, any clause that begins with because will have to have something else to support it. Can't stand on its own. So subordinating. So how will you rewrite this sentence then? You simply break it at because and then add something else to the last part so that it becomes an independent sentence, right? Huh? So there is no particular gadget which will produce excellent writing. Now, next, but using a yardstick like the fog index gives us some guidelines to follow for making our writing easier to read. Okay, this has to go entirely together. That's your second sentence. Then you write, this is because its two factors remind us to use short sentences and simple words. That's it. So you have three different sentences now instead of that one whole big sentence. And it is easier for us to understand now, right? Shorter sentences, this is, I don't have to give you any demo. You can look at it yourself, right? Any day, your understanding of the sentences or the understanding of what is written, the meaning is clearer always when you're using multiple sentences, right? One huge big sentence of this stature will not help you understand anything. But more importantly, while you are breaking lengthy sentences, your focus must be on the connectors. If it's a coordinating connector or conjunction like and, so, etc., then it is easier for us to break because what comes before and after the connector are independent clauses, so you can break it off. But in cases where you have a subordinated conjunction like because, you will have to add one or two additional things, and mostly that is either a word like this or it or there, right? Because we need a subject to complete the sentence. So something like an empty subject in the form of there or it or this, etc., can be used to remove, if not removed, at least to rewrite the sentence, which the clause which contains a subordinating conjunction, like we did here. Got it? Any questions here?
No, ma'am.
No, you understood, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let's try. It's already time, but it's all right. We'll try one more sentence. The next one, just see that and tell me if you're able to do it. We might be able to replace a significant portion of our interdivisional travel with electronic meetings that utilize video conferencing, real-time document sharing on PC screens, and other alternatives, not with a view to reduce employee or team effectiveness, but to act in unison with other companies which are using these new tools to cut costs and reduce wear and tear on employees. Just tell me what would be your sentence breaks. Where will you give a sentence break? Even if you don't give me the whole sentence, tell me where all can you break.
Ma'am, firstly, we can break on that.
What is it?
On
We might
that.
be able to replace.
At that, okay. Okay, we can break at that, yes. And then,
But
but is okay, next one. Okay. Yeah, so the rest of the part, right? But to act in unison with other companies which are using these new tools. Huh. So how will it look like then? If you're breaking at that, then what will be your second sentence?
it
Hmm? It has to be a separate sentence, so which means it will have to be cherished with some subject which is not here at the moment. Subject would be mostly something that is empty. That is, it. You can use words like it or there and all, which won't have any meaning on their own, but they will serve the purpose of a subject in the sentence. You want it in the chat box? I can place it there. Copy. Okay. You found the breaking point, and it should not be difficult for you.
Ma'am, we can break it at with the view.
Louder, I am not able to hear you. So if you're breaking it then you will have to form something different there, right? That whole portion that follows will have to be rewritten as a different sentence. How can you do that? First part, we are going to write it as, what is it? We might be able to replace a significant portion of our interdivisional travel with electronic meetings. Okay, that's where you broke. That's right. So the next sentence would be then, the verb is already there. You just need to provide a subject for this. So we're talking about electronic meetings. So you use something that will replace, which can act in place of that. So ideally you write something like these meetings, right? These meetings could utilize, or these meetings can utilize video conferencing, real-time document, and real-time document sharing on PC screens. Okay, that other alternatives and all of those things are not very important. You can leave that out. Then next part, not with a view to reduce employee or team effectiveness, but to act in unison with other companies, so on and so forth, right? So you can rewrite it as, the aim is not to reduce employee or team effectiveness, but to act in unison with other companies, right? So until other companies will be your next division of sentence, right? The third sentence. The last one can be, these companies are using these new tools to cut costs and reduce wear and tear on employees. Okay, you want me to show you the answers if you haven't understood? You can do that as well. But I'll have to rewrite. Okay, anyway. So you understood the first sentence would be, we might be able to replace a significant portion of our interdivisional travel with electronic meetings. It ends there. Then because it's about the meetings, then we'll start off with, these meetings could utilize video conferencing and real-time document sharing on PC screens. Next is about the main point then discussed is about the aim. So then you write, the aim is not to reduce employee or team effectiveness, but to act in unison with other companies. That is where the next idea ended. And then the last part is, which are using these new tools to cut costs. Why are you using it for? That you'll write as a separate sentence. These companies are using these new tools to cut costs and reduce wear and tear of employees, on employees. Understood? So with that one whole sentence, you've broken it down into 4 separate sentences, which is now giving you a much better clarity of meaning than how it was when it was in that whole bunch of words in that big, huge sentence. Got it? Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this is how you work on breathless sentences, right? Usually, why is it called a breathless sentence? Not just because of its length, it is also because too many ideas are crammed together. Too many different things are put together into one. So your task is to find out what are these different things and then break them down. One of the method you can use is also to look at the connectors between these different things so that you know your sentence breaks properly. Got it? Okay, all right. Any questions as of now? So this is, I think, fine for today. Anyway, I'm running late. I should have been in a different class by now. Okay. So we'll see, we'll continue. We'll look for a last time again inculcating all of this in a actual written work. We'll do a proper editing exercise with a longer essay or at least a 200 to 250 word thing and check if we are able to do this properly. Okay. Any questions? Okay, all right then. We'll see you again next week I think for one last time, we'll have a class next week. And thank you so much. See you again then next week.